2nd of August 1945, Downton Abbey. Good morning, Thomas Barrow said, as he came into the servants' hall that morning. Daisy had given the policeman, who Thomas was now greeting, a cup of tea, and the man got to his feet and held out a hand. Thomas looked at it, and then back to him, not offering one back. "Constable Pickering," he told Thomas, ignoring the rebuttal. "I received young Ernst's letters and I came to see how he was settling in." "I am afraid Ernst is not here at the present time," Thomas told him, mellowing a little. Ernst had spoken of the policeman, who had been so kind to him when he first arrived at Hull. "But you are welcome to wait if you wish. He is at Mr. Molesley's house, with remedial summer work." "He's very good," put in Daisy, hovering next to the policeman, a pot of tea to hand. "I teach the sometimes myself. He's a natural. But, of course, he is behind in some areas, ones which a young boy, having lived in Germany, would not know. The kings and queens, for example, chief rivers and ports." Thomas cleared his throat. "I am glad he met you, Constable, when he arrived. Some people may have been hostile to the lad." "Have been." Johnny Bates, for one; Gordon Howe Wart, one of the sons of the village postmaster, another. "He found his mother, then?" Stanley Pickering asked. Thomas froze for a moment, then shook his head. "No," he admitted, laconically. "Unfortunately, his mother is dead." "Then, Mr. Barrow, is it?" Thomas nodded. "There is something I feel I should tell you." He made a quick glance towards Daisy and then got to his feet, draining his cup. "Thank you, Mrs. Parker," he told her, then took some steps to the door. Thomas gestured towards the passage, along which the back door lay. Once they got to the yard, Thomas continued walking. The police constable followed him again and only began to speak to him when they had got to the path that would eventually lead to the generator building. "I think it only fair, as you have assumed responsibility for Ernst, that I want to warn you, there is a possibility that he could be considered an illegal alien." Thomas stopped walking, and looked at Constable Pickering, aghast. "Surely not. He did not come to spy or attack the country." Constable Pickering inhaled, gravely. "It's not how the Foreign Office might view it," he told Thomas. Sergeant Bott had been at pains to impress that point on him, and also allow him to come to speak to Thomas. "Were married to his mother," he told Thomas. "The boy could be interned, to determine his security risk. And, as such, you may be questioned too." Thomas shook his head, gently. "Arrested?" "Questioned." "When all the time a young boy had risked his life to find his mother." "Is there a way round it?" Thomas asked, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice. He liked Ernst. He reminded him a lot of Milo. And he was astounded by his bravery, and his modesty in finding himself in a country which was almost universally hostile towards him because of the country he came from and the language he spoke. "Surely no one would arrest a 13-year-old boy, would they not?" Pickering asked Thomas, rhetorically. "I have discussed it with Mrs. Pickering. We would be prepared to adopt him." "And that's what you've really come for?" accused Thomas, his cautious demeanor switching to anger in an instant. "To take him away? Ernst is settled here. He is succeeding in school." But Pickering held up a hand. "He is a lucky young fellow, that both you and I care about his well-being, Mr. Barrow," Constable Pickering told Thomas. "Wouldn't you agree?" "I suppose I would," Thomas admitted. I do care for Ernst. I could not see him taken away." "Then, I will leave it with you, Mr. Barrow," Constable Pickering told him, clapping him heartily on the shoulder. "Think on it, will you? For the boy's sake." 888,888,888. What did that policeman want? Daisy asked Thomas. Once Downton's butler had seen the Hull policeman back on his way on his bicycle. He had not come all the way from York on it, he had told Thomas, but had caught the train, and Thomas watched as he wobbled back down the long drive, until he was sure the man was out of sight. Adopt Ernst? Thomas couldn't consider it. He had come here, to Downton, and here he should stay, with him, Thomas. He was the closest the boy could get to his mother, and this house. Daisy stood, wooden spoon in hand as, past their mother both of the twins hurried, and several other people entered the kitchen, bustling around, fetching, carrying. "I'll tell you later," Thomas said, and Daisy recognized the look in Thomas's eyes. He was worried. He was scared about something. What had that policeman wanted? Bad harvest, called the children, as Thomas strode off to his office, with that month's food bill and books to balance. No, a good harvest, he called after them. After all, who would want a bad harvest? The Nazis, maybe? He hoped that the twins, Larry at least, was not trying to tease Ernst in some way. He had seen how the boy had been with him, and had not liked it. On the other hand, Thomas had made a mental note that he should speak to Daisy about something else. The fact that Ernst and Flora were always seen together, heads close, plotting like spies, laughing at something or other. It seemed like innocent childhood friendship, for they were the same age. But, the approaching age was one where mistakes could happen. Just look at Charlie Bryant, Master George's friend, who was the image of Major Bryant, but seemed to be kindness personified. He had saved George Crawley's life on many occasions, and was content in working in aeronautics now the war had ended. But his life could have been much different, considering the means by which he had entered the world. No bastard babies were going to be conceived at Downton Abbey under his watch, thank you very much. So, of course, Thomas would have to speak to Ernst, too. Bad harvest, called Larry once more, and Thomas stopped in the process of getting to his room, hand on the door handle as he turned once more. Stop the cursing, young Parker, he called to Larry. You'll bring bad luck to this house. But Flora appeared, long, dark brown hair to her back, tied with a ribbon. Thomas had never perplexed or intimidated her at all, and today was no different. She stepped between Thomas and Larry, and spoke. It's the beginning of August, Mr. Barrow, Flora told him. I was reading in the almanac that the beginning of August celebrated the baking of bread. Makes sense, said Daisy, who had appeared at the threshold of the kitchen. What with the harvest giving grain? Where did you get it, Flora? The girl looked up to her mother. Grandfather's farm, she told her. Mr. Mason has a lot of books, Thomas mused. He liked the old man, who Daisy had defended time after time. He had often wondered whether William, once footman at Downton, was who Daisy really wanted to marry. But she had admitted to initiating a kiss once, and it was clear she must have transferred her feelings from Thomas to William. There were times Thomas regretted how he had behaved in the past towards him, towards Daisy, towards a lot of people. He was glad to know contrition, and to be in a position he could help people now. And this is one of them? Thomas asked. And not all suitable, Daisy said, told her daughter, grabbing it from Flora and shaking it, as a mother dog might shake her errant pups. Almanac, the Farmer's Guide to the Ancient Calendar, Daisy read, then flicked through it. Beltane. Samhain. She shook her head. Probably just marking the year out for the farmers. It don't change much over the centuries, Thomas told her. Daisy looked up to him, and relented, handing the book back to her daughter. Bad harvest was what people called when they wanted a good harvest, Flora told Daisy. I do wonder about it all, said Daisy. All those people who have lived here before, the Britons and the Saxons. And the Vikings, said Larry, and pretended to attack his sister with a broom handle. Put that down, before you have an eye out, his mother told them. You don't see Ernst behaving like that. There was a silence. Ernst, who had appeared at the kitchen door, gave a nod. Ernst never fights, Larry complained. Not at school, not even. He broke off, looking away from Ernst, quickly glancing to Thomas and then his mother, and then to the floor. Not even what? Daisy asked her son. Nothing. Go out, bring the coal and tea, will you? She told him. Must I? Larry complained. I can, said Ernst, hand on the kitchen door. But at that offer, Larry charged past him, picking up the coal scuttle. And go and see if Mrs. Batemore has something she can spare for tonight's dessert, Daisy told her daughter. Her and Lucy have had 3 cancellations. We can save anything going to waste. Flora smiled as her mother waved a hand towards both of her children, who were still standing there, shooing them out, as Larry called the words once more. What are you wanting? The war's over, Flora asked her mother. Ah, but there'll be shortages, like the last war. Daisy told her daughter. And what did Mrs. Batemore do about them, ma'am? She tried something, said Daisy, catching Thomas Sparrow's eye for a moment and giving a smile. Thomas smiled back for a second. Ma'am, called Larry from the door, just as Daisy was about to go back to the kitchen. Thomas stopped too, and listened. Dad says Mr. Davis is wanting help over on Cherry Tree Farm. Can I go? I think it's Mr. Barrow you should be asking, Daisy told him, and Larry Parker looked from his mother to Downton's butler. As long as you take Ernst, Thomas told him. Ernst needs something to do now school's over, and he'll be a useful pair of hands. Hasn't Mr. Millsley given him summer work? Daisy asked Thomas. He has, but he can't stay in all the time. Strong lad like him. The youth would get in the harvests, at home, I remember, Ernst said, then broke off, looking between them all, hoping what he had said had not been taken badly. To feed the enemy, Larry said, glowering towards Ernst. Ernst is English, Thomas told him. His mother was English, and from what I understand, your mother's nationality determines your own. He glanced to Daisy, as he thought of me Lucina, born in Ireland, to an Irish mother. It determined the course of her life in so many ways. You would know about this? Thomas asked Daisy, who nodded. It's true, Daisy told her son. Ernst smiled a faint smile. He had had these discussions with Thomas before. It was better he thought of himself as English, even if his upbringing had been wholly German. Ernst is English. You cannot forget who you are, Thomas told Ernst, when he had come to him one evening, perplexed at the whole situation, the boys at school teasing him, a stone being thrown. By whom? Ernst did not know. A look of resentment crossed the Larry's features for a moment, before he nodded to Thomas. The door closed, and both twins were the other side of it, with Ernst following at a distance behind Larry Parker as Daisy and Andy's son walked at pace across the yard. They were doing what they were told, at last. No, said Thomas. About half an hour later, he had asked Daisy to step into his office, for Anna had been lingering in the passage, and he needed to talk to someone about what Constable Pickering had said. Daisy had promised she would not say a word. Then, she made a suggestion. No, Thomas repeated. I know you mean well, Daisy, you have a good heart. But, I do not think that would be very fair on the boy. He came here to find Milo, but I don't think any good would come of it if I were to adopt him. Yet the thought was tempting, very tempting. Thomas could see him, beside Ernst, helping the boy, guiding the boy, doing what he could for Milo's son that he had not been able to do for her. Think about it, Daisy urged him. And when you have, talk to Master George. 88,888,888 and another factor came into play that very afternoon when Mr. Millsley came to speak to Thomas about Ernst Scholz. He is rather excellent, in all his subjects, bar one, Joseph Millsley told Thomas Sparrow. Not behind? Daisy seems to think he is behind in history and geography. But Mr. Millsley shook his head. No, he has caught up, even exceeded my expectations of the second year for seniors, he told Thomas. So what subject do you talk about? Thomas asked him. Mr. Millsley touched his forehead, and then rubbed it. Mathematics, he told Thomas. That was a surprise, given his Ashby family. Given his father. He needs more work, Thomas asked him. Millsley nodded. Then, I am sure he would not object to sitting in with the lower forms. In fact, I will tell him that. He broke off when Mr. Millsley held up a hand. He is not behind in mathematics, Mr. Barrow, Millsley told him. Quite the opposite in fact. He handed Thomas a sheet of paper with letters and numbers on it. Advanced mathematics, calculus, he told him. It is beyond me, even beyond Mr. Dawes. I am going to send it to a friend of mine at Ripon Grammar for it to be checked. Millsley shook his head again. What I was going to say was, do you have any books belonging to Miss Ashby, or her brother? Perhaps there is something in those that Ernst could do while I determine what to do next with him. Are you saying he is at a level in mathematics equal to boys at Ripon Grammar? Thomas asked Millsley. At a level of the upper year, Millsley told him. This is very advanced mathematics, Mr. Barrow, which one would expect a potential candidate for university to be able to produce. not a 12-year-old. Thomas inhaled. Advanced mathematics. Clearly he did take after his parents after all, or else the school system in the Nazi Reich was very advanced. I am sure there must be something, Thomas told him. But, how did he come to produce this for you in the first place? And he saw Mr. Molesley look uncomfortable. He ran away last week, Mr. Barrow, Molesley admitted. Right at the end of term. We had the final school assembly, and he was not there. Myself and Mr. Dawes looked all over for him, until I found him in the attic, sitting with a lot of books around him. It's where we keep books the school does not use anymore. There was a silence, until Molesley had no choice but to fill it. He ran away, Mr. Barrow, from several of the other boys. There has been tension between them, or so I am given to understand. Tension? We spoke to the boys, and Keith Summersby told me that Gordon Howard had told Ernst that if he came to the assembly, he would kill him on the way home. The little dash. Indeed, Mr. Molesley told him. So we kept all the boys behind, and Mr. Dawes told them that he would be going to see the parents of those who were implicated, and that they were to remember the point of the war we have just lived through. That hatred does not thrive, that kindness and fellowship does. That they had to find it in their hearts for an English boy left in Germany through no fault of himself or his parents, and who had risked his life to get home. Why am I only hearing about this now? Thomas demanded. Mr. Molesley looked uncomfortable. Because I wanted to make sure Ernst was happy. I knew he was coming to me for remedial studies. And because Mrs. Summersby and Mr. Howard both want to come to speak to Ernst, and make their sons apologize. I take it you have no objection if they come this evening? 88,888,888. Not only did the parents of Gordon Howarth and Keith Summersby arrive at Downton the evening before, so had Master George, insisting that the meeting be held in the library. Keith was more restrained in his expression of dislike, but Gordon, older, and with a brother dead at the Normandy landings, had no qualms about being vocal. Did I do this to you, and your family? Ernst Skeltz said, when Gordon had told him he was a traitor and a spy, and he was a foul, nasty German, and deserved to die a long, slow death. Gordon, his father had proclaimed, and taken his son by the shoulder roughly, shocked at the vehemence of his son's words. But it was understandable. And Gordon Howarth had to admit that Ernst himself had not caused Luke Howarth personally to die. If anyone has cause to hate me, Ernst went on, nodding towards Master George, it is Lord Grantham. He has lost friends, he has lost comrades and his stepfather. Yet, he has opened his home to me, and treated me well, for which I am most grateful, sir, Ernst added, nodding to Master George. He did not dare look to Thomas. However, it was clear that the man was silent with fury and rage, his face white, his hands balled. It was a good move for Downton's butler to say nothing and let Master George take the lead. My thanks for coming here tonight, at the behest of Mr. Molesley, George Crawley summed up. Please, take your sons with you, and teach them something of the values that Ernest here is learning, British values, fair play, and giving people a chance. Lord knows, he has given your sons those. And Ernst noticed the anglicization of his name. He liked it. Maybe he should use it, although what Skeltz would be, he did not know. But there was a whisper of dread in his chest, over his heart, in his mind. Perhaps Ho's hometown would be better, in the end. Perhaps Mrs. Shumister would be able to let him live there again. He could speak the language he knew, revel in the stories he knew, of Tristan and Isolde, and Siegfried and the Rhine-Gold, of Arminicus and his defeat of the Romans in the Teutoburg forest, of the brothers Grimm. These were his life, not the legends and stories of Britain, British legends of Merlin and Arthur, of Robin Hood and of Alfred the Great had not been told to him by Mr. Skeltz as he had grown, told on visits to different parts of Germany, to mountains and lakes, to the sea, at home on winter evenings by the fire. Perhaps those boys were right, he didn't really belong here, and he did belong in Wilhelmshaven. Mrs. Summersby looked as if she were about to argue with Master George, as both parents turned, but seemed to think better of it, as the new Lord Grantham nodded towards the library door, and within a second, Thomas was opening it. "His lordship may have left it at that, but I have not," he hissed at the boy's parents as they passed. "Your son has threatened murder, Mr. Howarth," he added. Josiah Howarth turned, and gave Thomas a grave look. "And you know it," Thomas thought, triumphantly. But, what jurisdiction did he have? Ernst was a guest of Master George, nothing really to do with him, apart from a link to his mother. And as Ernst went to his room, once Milo's, the under-housekeeper's room, Thomas sat in his office, looking at the wine stock again. Something didn't add up, literally, but his mind was absent from the present, instead focusing on the boy. Something shifted in Thomas's mind, though what, he did not know. Something moved and made sense. It took until the next day, and an unexpected visitor for Thomas to know exactly how to solve the situation. 88,888,888 3rd of August 1945. No need to shout, Thomas told Larry Parker, as the boy yelled that someone had arrived to see him. Thomas, with the culprit in mind, being of the upstairs variety rather than downstairs, was just about to go to speak to George Crawley. They had had another late supper and had gambled into the early hours. Peter Pelham, not even 19, had arrived shortly after the Summersbys and the Haworths on his motorcycle, to the consternation of his older sister, who hated the idea of her little brother putting himself into danger. "I needed to report this to you, Master George," Thomas had practiced. "Of course, he is your guest, but I need you to know." Charlie Bryant. Flash Harry, more like, all sparkle and show and words for Miss Sybil, on whom it had no effect, and Miss Marigold and Miss Caroline. And a poor word for Thomas, something Thomas would never let lie. He had seen Charlie come downstairs, looking for, well, something. But he was sure the wine had gone as well. "But, there is a man here for you," Larry told him. "He wouldn't come inside. He said he would wait for you on the bench beneath the ash tree in the grounds." That famous bench. So much had been shared there, secrets, confidences, confessions. Which would it be for Thomas, did he suppose? But the joviality of thought soon evaporated when he saw who was standing beside the bench. The man turned when he heard Thomas approach, and dipped his head to him. James Chadwick. Thin, and much older than Thomas remembered. His vision of him was always at the Cavendish laboratory, craning over a small cylinder, which looked like a tiny telescope, a sample case clamped to one end, barium oxide film across the other. It was like a passage back to another place and time in his life, and Thomas wondered whether, if Chadwick called him, he would wander down a path that would take him back to, say 1923, with Milo turning from her bench in one of the darkened rooms, face falling as Rutherford cleared out the building, refusing to let anyone work too long or too much. Thomas knew Milo had disregarded his instruction the minute Rutherford had left for New Zealand. But she may not have made her breakthrough with radar, in collaboration with Cockcroft and with Walton, had she not? "Dr. Chadwick," Thomas said, and nodded to the man. "Won't you sit, or better yet, come up to the house, and—" But Chadwick raised a hand, coughing involuntarily in response to Thomas. "No, thank you." "But no," he told him. "We should walk, Mr. Barrow, in the grounds of this lovely house. It will be ... safer that way." But Thomas didn't move. Instead he put his fists to his hips, and said, "I don't know what you mean." "Oh, I think you do," Chadwick coughed, and Thomas's mind filled with the thought of Ernst. He felt to his livery, patting the outside of the jacket. He had never had any right to keep the telegram Ernest had sent to his father, that Milo had given to him. But he had every right to keep the second. Chadwick shifted his weight between his feet, and gasped at the air, as if it was scarce. "I have come to speak to you about me, Lucina," he told Thomas. "I told you everything I knew the last time," Thomas told Chadwick, stiffly. He reached to the telegrams again, and thought about Milo, her face serious, keen. 10th of June 1943, "Regret inform me Lucina Ashby dead." And his fingers, before even conscious thought had penetrated his mind, had withdrawn it, and was opening it to show to Chadwick. "Shall we walk, Mr. Barrow?" Chadwick asked, glancing at the telegram. then gently pushing his hand away. "Thomas?" he conceded. And Thomas nodded. "Yes, of course, that would be what he wanted you to think," James Chadwick told him, as they got to the ornamental gardens. But Chadwick shook his head. "I think these will make it easier," he told Thomas, and it was Chadwick's turn to reach for his own coat. Out of the inside pocket, he pulled out a collection of letters, bundled together with parcel string. "The letters all addressed to you, Mr. Barrow," he went on, as he passed them over to Thomas. "From me, Lucina." "Me, Lucina," Thomas echoed, and looked down at the front envelope. It was Milo's handwriting, all right, untidy, large, filling most of the envelope. Writing to him as under butler at Downton Abbey, and then butler at his address in California, and finally butler at Downton Abbey again. "But these letters," Thomas began, then broke off. He looked at Chadwick, completely at odds with what he had expected when he saw James Chadwick. "From Milo." "From Milo," Chadwick confirmed. "Every letter she ever wrote to you, from the day she came to see you after your suicide attempt, to the last one." He watched as Thomas scrambled to the back of the pile. He looked back in confusion to Chadwick, for the letter was not dated 1943 at all. Indeed, the last one bore the date of 24th of April 1945. And this time, Thomas stood still, stood firm. Questions he was determined to get answers for parading in his mind. But Chadwick looked unperturbed. "Mr. Barrow," he went on, "did you ever know a man by the name of Jack Prue?"